So, what is the book professor?
Well, what I do is I help people who aren't writers to become authors. And so I work strictly with people who want to write a nonfiction book. I call them a high-impact nonfiction book that will either save lives, change lives, or transform society. So 3 things. And it seems like that's sort of narrowly defined, but it really isn't, because the people I'm working with are writing business books. They're writing, personal, they're like overcomer books. They're writing, what they've learned, what they've discovered, what they've gleaned through life. And many people want to leave a legacy. That's one of the reasons that they want to, put a concrete stamp on the world that here's what I learned and here's what I have to offer you. But what I discovered is it kind of all got started because I was teaching writing at a university in St. Louis, and I also own a publishing company, a nonfiction press. And what I realized is that most of the people who had the most strongest, most life-changing type stories they were trapped inside of them because they didn't know how to get that out. So I took what I knew as a teacher of writing at the university level and a publisher and kind of pulled that together under the umbrella of the book professor to create a step-by-step methodology, if you will, that starts with just the first inkling of an idea that someone might have about wanting to write a book, to take them all the way through the mapping out the book, all the contents of it, the writing of it, the editing, and then the publishing. And I also have a book marketing company that can help them with marketing their book. So
you came about this. You were born into a very wealthy family, very
Really? I missed that part.
So share a little bit of your background. Growing up, what do you experience?
Well, I didn't grow up, actually. As a child, we moved every 9 months to 3 years, and I was growing up. My dad worked for IBM, and we were transferred all on. It sounds military, but it was IBM, which during those days, we moved a lot. And so I ended up I grew up mostly around Oklahoma. And so I say I'm from Tulsa because that's where I went to high school. But I went away to college to Fulton, Missouri, to William Woods, because that was going away for me. And then when I graduated, I got a job, got hired. Okay, so I graduated with 3 majors in English, in business, and in communications. And so I'd always loved to be a writer, but your parents put this thing in your head, like, how are you going to make money? You do something that, you can have a career at. So I went to work for IBM as a systems engineer. So that makes a lot of sense, right? But anyway, worked for IBM for a while. When our kids were born, I didn't work at all while they were little until they were in junior high. But I developed a nonprofit ministry where we did after-school Bible clubs in public schools. And so I wrote all the curriculum for that and, developed this ministry. We ended up going international through missionaries. And so, I wrote for 8 years, this curriculum and was the, head of the ministry. And then when they went back to school in junior high, I started working part-time as a web designer and then took a job with Oracle to, sell software. So I was kind of back on that technology track. And I hated it. Oh my gosh. Larry Ellison is at the head of Oracle, and if you know anything about him, that whole trickle-down mentality was just toxic. But you get kind of trapped by the money. And I was miserable. I mean, I would wake up every morning just, you have a multi-million-dollar quota, and they'll really literally practically, behead you if you don't make it. And so, as it turns out, the thing that made me move is my dad came down with a terminal brain tumor, and we knew he was going to die within 7 months. And so they live here in Florida, in Punta Gorda. I don't know if anybody of you know where that is. But, and I was in St. Louis, so I just shut everything down and came to Florida for that last amount of time, going back and forth, to be with my parents. So when I got back home, after my dad died, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, what now? What do you do? I had no job, just kind of, and it's a weird feeling, that when you're used to getting up and you know, and I don't know, it's just weird to think about, you know, who do you really want to be? So I had always loved to write. I thought, well, maybe I'll take a couple of college classes. And then I'm like, wait, I already have those degrees, you know. So I went back to school and got my master's degree. I got a master's of fine arts in writing, and then was asked to join the faculty at Lindenwood and teach writing. So that's my path.
You became Erickson. Tell us, you had a unique marriage.
Is it?
In this setting. Share a little bit of that.
Well, first of all, I have to tell you that...
Roger, you can identify with
yeah. So we got married on Veterans Day, November 11th. And
not that you remember.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, Tom picked the date. He wanted to, okay, my husband is 60 years old and he'd never been married before. And I'm like, okay, you get to pick a lot of stuff about this, yeah? So he picked the location and the date and everything. So he picked outdoors in November. And I'm like, that's interesting. Where is this going to be? So we went, he's also what I call, so he had a long stellar career with KPMG, and they have to, as a partner in tax, and they have to retire when they're at 60. That's the part of the partnership agreement, so that the up-and-comers can, you know, get the partnership jobs. And so he's in a little in-between phase right now. He's being lured by a lot of different companies to work for them. But so he's also what I call like an amateur professional photographer. He's extremely good landscape photographer and travels around the world at different workshops to do, you know, landscape photography. So he wanted to do something that was, you know, outdoors and beautiful. So we went to Big Sur, and it was lovely. We arranged the wedding, and just the two of us. I have kids and, you know, families all everywhere, and, you know, we just wanted us. We just didn't want the hoopla and all that kind of stuff. So we got married by this beautiful waterfall in Big Sur, and, you know, I was watching the weather reports, and it was rain, and okay, talk about meditation and putting your intention out there. Every day, about maybe 100 times a day, I would say, my wedding day is warm and sunny, and it's 70 degrees. And guess what? My wedding day was warm and sunny, and it was 70 degrees, so.
Then where'd you go from Big Sur?
Yeah. Well, we stayed around the Monterey area for a while, and then we were gone for a couple weeks, and then they had their retiring partners dinner here in Orlando at the tail end of that, so we came here after that. So.
Wonderful marriage.
He's a
You're
wonderful
blessed.
man.
You're
Beyond measure.
Yeah. So, if somebody's going to write a book, Brett Blair, did you ever write a book? Yeah. If somebody said they want to write a book, I asked you to do this, right?
Right.
And my purpose was what?
To give it out, to, you know, to show people what I've done with this. Because if you take a look at this, and I do want
They're
to...
on the back table back there.
Yeah, no, I don't know, they're all...
Oh, they're on the table now,
I passed them all
okay.
out for everybody, but what I've done is made this a step-by-step process, just like I said, from the beginning original idea all the way to the publishing. But one of the things that differentiates me from other book coaches, because there's a lot of good people out there that can help you write your book, but if you look on the inside of this, is that the way that we construct your book in the beginning, we do it in a way so that when your book is finished, you should be able to take every chapter out of that book and repurpose it to meet your market where they're already engaged. You know, everybody's not going to read a book. I mean, most people aren't going to read a book, but they're still in your target market. So we can take the material from your book and repurpose it for if you're giving keynote speeches or doing workshops or seminars or podcasts or blogs or online courses or video training, whatever. You're already in that position to do that, to split the material up. But the way that the classes work, I coach people either on a one-to-one basis or in group classes. And there's people here like Sean Carney and Tom Hoffmeister is one of my one-on-one clients, Doug Damon, Craig Hughes, other people that are in our network here. But you literally just have to start with the idea for your book. And we go through and we create what I call a book map, which is a visual representation of your entire book. And that's the process that Sean's involved in now and Tom's already completed. But so that everything that's going to be in your book, every story you're going to put in there, every example, every point you're going to make, And we construct your book in what I call problem solution sets. So like, what's the problem that, Tom, can I use you as an example? This is what I love Tom's book. He is going to revolutionize the elder care industry, and I keep telling him, you are creating my future. I want this out there to where people are honored and they're effective and they're busy and they're engaged in their elder years, because there's such a wealth of things to offer out there. And so, some of the problems in his industry are that, let me just use this example, is that you don't know who you're working for, perhaps, when you're the company that has the elder, home. So who is it? Is it the patient, or is it the patient's kids? I'm sorry, I'm not using the right term. They're not patients, they're residents. Is it the resident or their kids? So that's a problem. So and so we have these problem solution sets in his book, and so the problem might be that they don't know what their role is. The kids don't know what their role is. And so the solution is they create job descriptions for the family. Here's what you do and here's what we do. And it really helps them to understand that, okay, we're doing their laundry unless you want to do it, but if you want to do it, and we're doing this part, but here's where you need to come in. And so one of the big, I would say, fears, actually an enormous fear of families, is they feel like they're warehousing their loved one. And that what his approach is, they take that feeling all totally out of it. It's just their new home environment. And so we create these books in these problem solution sets so that the reader, when they pick up the book and they see your chapter's title, yes, oh, I'm worried about that, and that bothers me, and that bothers me, and I'm worried about that. And so they see themselves in the material before they actually get into it to read it. So it's organized in a manner that is, they can't say no, to buying the book and reading it. But the point is it's never about the book. Never, never, never. People buy books all the time and don't read it. It's about the change that is created in the person who is taking in that material and learning from it. So how are they different? What is the difference? Which is why it's important to have a plan where you can repurpose your material to reach people where they're already engaged, so that you can broadcast that out in a targeted way just across multiple venues.
And everybody has a story.
Yeah.
Everybody has a story. I think about my grandfather's grandfather came to Missouri, from Kentucky, floated down the Ohio River into the Mississippi River, and then came north up and landed up in Missouri. Wouldn't it have been great to have him capture that, just handwritten what he did in his life, and where all that is. Talk a little bit about Wendy Everts.
Yeah, so Wendy Everts, I hadn't met her before, and I just started going to this church, and her husband is phenomenal. He's a phenomenal preacher. But Tom introduced him to, and she's writing a book that doesn't exactly fit in, because I really strictly deal with adult nonfiction. But her book it's what I call, it's an allegory. It's a teaching lesson like, anybody ever read the book, The Servant? I know you guys have, the Duncans have. But it's a story that teaches things that is in a real life manner. So I came into this with Wendy just as her editor and kind of a coach, for the material, etc. We're doing the final edits right now. But her story is for middle school girls who are trying to understand how to apply their Christian faith. And it has transformed into something that, she calls me, and I love this when people are so excited about their own book. She's like, it's so good, it's so good, it's so good. And she's right, it's so good. I would like to talk about Joe's book for a minute. One of my clients, Joe Fingerhut, who came to me about maybe it's 2 years ago now, just an idea of what he wanted to write. We went through this entire process that I developed through my group coaching classes, and his book has just been released in December. But talk about change lives, save lives, transform society. His book is for teenagers. It's called Permission to Play: How to Build a Life that is Fun, Fulfilling, and Purposeful for Teenagers. And one of the things that's so interesting is that he wanted to travel the world when he graduated from college. And of course, no parents like that idea, right? It's like you're educated, go, get a job, right? And so one of the beautiful things about this story is what I call the dance between he and his father as they were negotiating what Joe's life would be like. And it was so respectful on Joe's part, and then how the parents responded to the fact that he respected their concerns and was working to answer them. So it's like this trade-off. And I thought, it's going to change the life of teens and their parents. At the end, we put a study guide for them to work through together so that, it really facilitates listening and understanding. And I'm really excited that he's partnered with the NCADA, which is the National Council of Alcohol and Drug Abuse. He does a lot of speaking engagements for them for their teen events, and it's being really well received. But that change lives, save lives, transform society. When the book gets out there and does its work, that's exactly what it will do.
One of the you talk about legacies and stories. Rob Ratcliffe, a Hills Angel down in Alexandria, Louisiana, is a third generation from a construction. And his grandfather started. His grandfather was born in Arkansas, and then the family moved to Alexandria, Louisiana. And while he was a teenager, they moved again. He wouldn't go. He stayed there by himself and finished high school. Got a $300 scholarship to Harvard. Came back to Alexandria and started this construction company. If you've ever been to Alexandria, Louisiana, show of hands. Oh, one hand. You go into the terminal in the small town of Alexandria, Louisiana. It's the most beautiful airport terminal you'll ever see. And that their company, their family built that. And I could go on and on about that. So anyhow, I went to Alexandria and met Rob's parents. His mother is an ordained Episcopal priest, and his dad is in the construction business. And I said, you've got to write a book. You've got to write a book. You've got to tell this story. If nothing else, just for the next 3 or 4 generations. And so, actually, Rob then bought a gift thing.
Right.
Tell a little bit about that.
Well, Rob, contacted me because he had heard me speak at our Denver summit and said, I want to get this gift for my dad for Christmas. And I said, well, that's great. What a great idea, because he wants to write a book. And so I've never had, this is not a great story about a client. So I think this is the only one that's not really working the way that I had hoped. But he bought this gift certificate for him to join. And I do group coaching classes, which I want to talk about too, because I've got another one starting in March. But he bought this gift certificate for his father, and so I never talked to him before we got started or anything. And so he has this idea that he just wants to write his family memoir, which the process would work with that. But you said he's real left brain and engineering stuff, but he's
bottom line,
a little cantankerous. What?
Oh, he's a deep person.
So, I don't think he's really enjoying it, to be honest with you.
But we planted the seed, and it'll evolve into something.
Yes, it will. It will. One of the things that I'd like to do is he thinks he just wants to write this for his family, his memoir, which is fine. And I was like, well, how big is your family? He's like, well, and he said, we got these family meetings all the time. So, well, how many people come? He said, 5. And I was like, well, I really think your story is bigger than that. I really think it could have an impact way beyond your family. He goes, well, I disagree. So we're still working on it. And it's like, I don't know how to come and work with me, dude. Come on. And he says, yeah, your classes. He goes, a lot of talk and not much information.
Classic.
And I'm like, okay. Yeah. I think it's a little technology challenge too. So.
Yeah.
So there's 2 things that come to mind. One is there's no excuse not to write a book.
No, because often the reason people come to me is because they want to write a book and they don't know how to get started, or they started writing and got all tangled up, or People keep telling them that they need to write a book, which is what you've probably been hearing from Tom.
Tell them a little bit about Helen.
Helen Gennari is another client of mine. She's just a lovely, lovely woman. She's probably about 75 years old. She used to be a nun, but she left the order at one point and later years got married. But she grew up in a home where there was family violence, not toward her, but her father beat her mother mercilessly, for most of her life. And her book is about the impact that has on children and how to work your way through those things at a later date. But has anybody ever heard of the psychologist Lundy Bancroft? He writes a lot. He's the premier authority in abusive type relationships. And
What's his name again?
Lundy, Lundy Bancroft. And he's just world renowned. Well, she met him somewhere at a conference at one point and got his card and contacted him. He actually wrote the foreword to her book. It's that good. So again, a lot of the books that I work on that are what I kind of call them the Overcomer series, people who have overcome really difficult things and gone on to live full and healthy lives, will have discussion guides in them to help people work through that material themselves. And so she just got 5-star rating. The book is called From the Heart of an Abandoned Daughter, and it's a beautiful story of her growing up. And one of the things that I do is, and Helen was a good writer already, but most of my clients aren't writers at all. And so when we take you through the process, there's a lot of teaching about how to write compelling, creative nonfiction, which is where you're using all the techniques of fiction. And this is where I put on my, university professor hat to teach how to pull those elements in so that your book reads like a story. Like, we still want the reader to get lost in your material as a story format and keep them engaged so that they can get to the purpose of their book. One other thing I wanted to mention, Tom, is that one of the things that we do from the get-go in the early stages before you're writing anything is we go through a series of foundational questions that help you to crystallize your message and really distill it down into a single purpose statement before you start writing. So Sean's nodding his head. Do you remember what yours is?
Kind of.
Say what you kind of remember. What I want you to notice is that in the purpose statement, it says what the book is going to accomplish. Why are you writing this? What is the change that's going to happen, and who is it for? Because we want to define a very narrow audience and then penetrate that audience to the fullest degree, rather than write some shotgun thing that we hope it's for everybody, because no book is for everybody. But what do you?
The purpose of my book is to show people, help people to understand through overcoming, and help them to become who they are truly called to be.
Yeah, and
it's very detailed. So I grew up in a very abusive home, in several different types of abuse, and graduated to drug addiction by the time I was 13, and it moved forward and couldn't work for anybody. So started a company, my first company at like 14, and then started a business at 17 when I got out of high school, and became very wildly successful. Crashed and burned, wildly successful, crashed and burned, wildly successful, crashed and burned. And after a while, something about me was crashing and burning. Well, when I started, and through counseling stuff, I realized the stuff that happened in my childhood was set. So I'd get to a certain level, and then I'd just self-sabotage. And I see a lot of people, a lot of business people that do that. So it's really about getting beyond that and understand how to, because God called me to do something, and fear, I get to a point and then fear says, well, no, you can't do that. Crash. And that's really what the book's about. And we worked like for a couple hours or an hour or so to come up and really distill it down to what I was trying to say, because I'm a little wordy if you haven't noticed. So it was like, instead of a purpose statement, it was like a purpose paragraph or two.
I'm like, nope, it's a sentence.
So what's going to happen in March?
In March, I'm starting a new group, to work with a new group in my class. We do these group coaching classes, and all the material is available online that you see for this, module 1, 2, and 3. And classes are limited to 10, so I would love to talk to any of you who would like to, explore it. Great, good.
Got one.
And it works. It really works. And I think that the thing that is so cool about the group coaching is that we are on a call for an hour every week as a group, and this is like your book mastermind. And nobody's writing the same thing you are, but there's a really interesting way that you bond together and contribute to each other's material and give it encouragement, because it's really hard to do something that you don't know how to do, and you don't, in your head, you're a business person, you're not a writer. And we kind of start just working through that, and then you have individual conferences with me as well during that time. So I would love to work with all of you, and it's chunked. Nobody I work with quits their job to write a book. And it takes about a year, but you know what? That year is going to pass anyway. You may as well have something to show for it that establishes you as an expert, increases your credibility, and helps you to leave a legacy behind you that is really tangible and effective. Because what I'm finding is that my clients who aren't writers are becoming authors, and they are literally changing the world just by telling their story. And I want to close with this. The reason I do this is because I feel like this is the purpose that God has put me here on earth. This is my kingdom work. There are people over here like you who have the answers. We have so many problems in our world that we don't even know how to name them anymore, but we know top-down things don't work. Government can't fix anything. Tom Hoffmeister doesn't like this when I say that, but organized religion doesn't fix things. And Lord knows we've tried to medicate our problems away. Those are the top 3. And things get more and more complex and more tangled. But the answers are trapped inside of people like you. I really believe that. So over here are people like you who have answers, but maybe not the courage or the skills or the tools to get those out. Over here are other people who in some cases are literally dying, looking for those answers. I'm just that hallway that connects you. And people like you can literally give people 2 things that we can't live without, which are hope and help. And you can do that just by telling your story. So,
Cheer for Nancy.